What's up guys, it's Steady Chaos. So I recently downloaded Dying Light 2 on PC here, running on my 48-inch LG C1 and running on the Ryzen 3950X RTX 3080. And I'm not sure how I feel about this game. On the one hand, at times like this, when you're walking around in the woods or in a natural setting where you're surrounded by a lot of foliage, where you have, a sun-soaked sky and you have a lot of dynamic shadows, it looks great. See my shadow here that the sun is casting on my body and the ground. It all looks really good. Textures look pretty good from afar anyway. Interior spaces, they look okay, I guess. So you have that strange juxtaposition where at times it looks decidedly next gen. The outside, the lighting as I talked about. And then when you get inside, it almost looks like things, the furniture, textures up close are a little muddy, a little blurry. Some of the lights, for example, it doesn't have a smooth rim around it. It has jaggies, like it's a low polygon count. So this game feels like it has 1 foot in next generation and 1 foot in last generation. And I presume that's a result of the game having a 6-year development cycle. So it was developed probably with a release in mind on the PlayStation 4 Pro and the Xbox One X. And it just because of all the delays that never came to fruition. So now here we are, 1+ year into the life cycle of the Xbox Series X and PlayStation 5, and with the Ampere GPUs and the AMD 6600, 67, and 6800 XT cards. And it just feels like it's not quite that AAA next-gen experience you were expecting graphically, but at the same time, it's not to say it's bad. I mean, look at this outdoor environment, it's beautiful. But then you also have to take into account the art direction that Techland has decided to go with here for Dying Light 2, and it feels decidedly more fruity, decidedly more colorful, and a little bit less drab, and that makes it feel a little bit less post-apocalyptic, which is kind of disappointing. But I'm only like 1 hour into playing this game. I haven't really had time to really get a great feel for it. These are just initial impressions. And also, a thing about this game that I've noticed is it's not particularly well optimized. For an RTX 3080 card, I would expect better performance. So what you see here is DLSS running in, I believe, is it balanced mode? Let's go to options, go to video. So it's set in 4K, and then you go DLSS balanced. So you have 3 options. You can go DLSS quality, DLSS balanced, and DLSS performance. I don't see a huge difference graphically between any of these, but there is a difference in performance. If you go to DLSS quality, I'm getting slightly lower frames now. I'm getting about 80 FPS, and things look maybe marginally crisper, but it's hard to say. And then if you go to DLSS balanced, now I'm getting 96 frames per second, so about a 10 to 15 FPS increase, and I don't notice a huge difference in graphical quality. And then performance, DLSS performance similarly, will give you even better FPS in performance boost. But even that looks almost on par with DLSS quality and DLSS balanced. So now I'm getting 119 FPS, and I'm not noticing a huge degradation in image quality. So I think my advice to most people would be to use DLSS balanced or performance. And then if you look at the other graphical settings, and this is why I say I don't think it's particularly well optimized, is because I'm only getting, if I use DLSS quality, I'm only getting about 80, 75, 85 FPS, and that's with no ray tracing. So all the settings are high, except for motion blur, that's low or off. But you see here sun shadows quality, that can be ray traced. Ambient occlusion quality can be ray traced. Global illumination quality can be ray traced. You can have a ray traced flashlight. Reflections can be ray traced. the thing that's frustrating too is when you make these changes in game, you have to reboot the game. So every time you go from a ray trace setting to a not ray trace setting and vice versa, you have to reboot the game. So save, let's restart the game so I can show you the performance. And the performance is not good, unfortunately. If you use any amount of ray tracing in this game, let alone all the ray tracing features, even with DLSS performance selected, you're not going to have good quality in terms of frame rate. You're going to have pretty choppy frame rate performance. It's going to be pretty low too. And again, this is on an RTX 3080 with a pretty substantial overclock. So continue. I've overclocked my RTX 3080 FE memory about 800 megahertz, and I've overclocked the core about 100 megahertz, which gives me about a 5 to 8 FPS boost in performance on general. Or in general, I should say. So this game, undoubtedly, over the next 6 to 12 months, is going to receive all sorts of patches and quality of life improvements and optimizations. There's no doubt about that. But so you see here, I'm getting 55 frames per second with DLSS engaged, but with all the ray tracing features engaged. And I gotta say, ray tracing in this game, it's hard to even notice. So if we go to options, so this is DLSS performance. If we go to DLSS quality, with all the ray tracing features engaged, I'm getting 39 frames per second with an RTX 3080 overclocked and a Ryzen 3950X. It's insane. It's not good. You would expect better. And like I said, this game at times looks good, but at times it looks decidedly last gen, especially with certain character models. So really, I would not recommend using ray tracing in this game because it just does not improve the visuals enough, in my opinion, to warrant the performance hit. It really does kill performance. And watch this. If I go to options and I turn off DLSS, go no upscaling, just straight native 4K, save, back, wow, 27 frames per second. So again, PC, RTX 3080 in 4K with some ray tracing engaged, and I'm getting 20 frames per second. Utterly unplayable, utterly. So if you want to use ray tracing in this game, even if you have an RTX 3090, which is only marginally better than a 3080, you're going to have to use DLSS. There's no doubt about it. You're going to have to use performance with ray tracing. And here we are, we jump up to 59 FPS. Depending on what I'm doing, that drops down to 57, 56, 55. So if you can go into options without having to restart the game, we can turn off some of these settings. So ray trace sun shadows, just go to PCF. Contact shadows quality can stay very high. Ambient occlusion, just go to high. Global illumination, because you're outdoors a lot and there's a lot of lighting and indirect lighting from the sun, I would if you're going to use ray tracing at all, I would leave this one engaged. Reflections, I would turn just to high. And then ray trace flashlight off. And we are in DLSS performance still, so that gets us 67 FPS, 70 FPS. I'm just not sure ray tracing is worth it. I'm not sure that it's even worth it. Look at 61 frames per second with DLSS on, and pretty much hardly any ray tracing. It's just, I don't know. Luckily the gameplay, look at that. I just dropped down to 47 FPS there. But luckily the gameplay seems pretty good so far. So this is going to be one of those games where, you know, traversal and upgrading your character over time, and it's a huge game world. All those things appear to be on point and good, but the performance optimization, some of the bugs I've already come across, look at these hitches, these frame rate hitches I'm getting, that's going to need to be addressed at some point by Techland. And the fact that this game doesn't even run in HDR. It's merely an SDR game. In 2022 for a AAA title, I'm sorry, but that's unacceptable. That should be fixed. This needs to be in HDR. I don't know why it's not. I don't know what's going on there. So it feels like Techland is trying to arrive as a notable AAA developer, but I feel like they're not quite there yet. Dying Light put them on the map, and here they are with high expectations in Dying Light 2, and technically and graphically, they have not met those expectations yet. I just don't think they're there. But that's not to say the game looks bad, and that's not to say it won't be improved in time. I'm sure it will be. Whoa! Again, lots of frame rate hitches. And the thing, too, is if I turn all ray tracing off entirely, and then I turn DLSS off, and I just go straight native 4K with high settings, no ray tracing, I'm still barely getting 60 frames per second, often getting dips down into the 50s and upper 40s. So if you are an Ampere GPU owner, and certainly if you own the 6800 XT, you're going to need to be playing with AI upscaling. You're just going to have to.
Hello?
Hey, look, some zombies.
Can you hear me now?
I can show you a little bit of quick gameplay.
Loud and clear. That means you must be close.
I swam across the lake.
So, he almost reached the tunnels.
Also, an interesting thing, too, about the audio in this game is
Left the city. I'm coming from the other
you're a new character. You're not Crane. You're this guy called Aiden, but you're using, it's the same voice actor as Crane from the first game. So it's like, I feel like I'm Crane, but everyone's calling me Aiden, and I'm a different character, but I have the same voice, so that's kind of bizarre. Stay down. So yeah, those are my first impressions. No doubt, I'm gonna play this game through. You know, I just spent $60 on it. I really enjoyed the first game, so we're gonna give it more of a chance. But technically, there is room for improvement, and hopefully, over the next few months, they continue to patch it and they continue to optimize it so that you can get a higher frame rate with at least DLSS quality engaged. All right, guys, if you have any questions or comments, leave them down below. And until next time, we'll see you later. Peace.